All right, another day of 49ers training camp in the books here from the team facility. We have 2 full weeks in the books. 14 days of training camp. Today was day number 14, and Brock Purdy threw his 10th interception, his 9th and his 10th interceptions of training camp out there on the field today. So let's go through the day. Let's see if Kyle Shanahan is concerned. Shanahan said that he wasn't concerned actually afterward, using really similar language to how he talked about Trey Lance's interception or dropped interception turned touchdown against the Raiders. Obviously, that throw was almost picked off in the preseason game. Shanahan said that he's happy that Trey Lance let it rip on Sunday, and Shanahan today said, I'd rather not have interceptions in camp, but I'd rather have them in camp than games. And he thinks that Purdy is letting it rip in a way that's good for his development. So that was Shanahan's explanation. But I'll have to tell you, the 2 picks today. First, Brock Purdy to Curtis Robinson, the linebacker, underneath pass intercepted. Robinson had actually gotten his hand on a pass earlier from Purdy, knocked it away. That one, though, was not an interception. Then later, one of the best DB plays I'd seen at camp, it was Diamador Lenore working against Brandon Ayuk in the red zone. And Ayuk's been a vacuum cleaner. He's caught everything so far. Brandon Ayuk, though, this one, he didn't win the one-on-one battle with Diamador Lenore, who got physical and coverage in the end zone, and that ball ended up popped up in the air, and Tashawn Gibson intercepted it. So, out of, if you count clean interceptions, there was only 1 against Brock Purdy today. Still, he's thrown 10 in about 200 attempts. It's a 5.1% interception rate for him in this training camp. Let's give that some context. Last year, Brock Purdy working against the third team. This year, he's obviously working against the first team. Brock Purdy threw 6 picks in 101 attempts. So a 5.1% interception rate this year, which is high. His INT rate last season was even higher in training camp, 5.9%. And that obviously did not translate to the regular season for Brock Purdy. In the regular season and in the playoffs, he threw only 4 picks, a rate of 1.7%, which is much better than league average. So I think all that's worth noting, because if these interceptions and these INT-worthy throws, pick-worthy throws, Purdy was also decent in that regard last year, if they don't translate into regular season play, then Kyle Shanahan will be fine. He'll say, okay, we're installing stuff. I want my quarterbacks to push the limits in practice. If they push the limits in practice, they'll find those limits, and they won't go there in games. So with Jimmy Garoppolo, the INT rate was always higher in practice than it was in games. And with Brock Purdy, at least last season, it was higher in practice than it was in the games in 2022. So that's why the 49ers do believe that practice and games are 2 different things. And that's why we should judge all of this within context. The 49ers want Purdy to be ripping it. They want him to be accurate with the football. And in general, he has been. It's been in the mid-60s. Today, I thought he made a couple of his nicest throws, too, of training camp. The red zone work was good for Brock Purdy today. Ripped one to Brandon Ayuk, ripped one to Deebo Samuel, both sideline throws and red zone work for touchdowns. And then there was a play earlier in practice, which probably would have been a sack in an actual live action play. But I chart everything for accuracy if they don't stop playing because they can't tackle the quarterback. And Purdy hit Brandon Ayuk deep, and he put a lot of mustard, a lot of velocity on a 40 to 50-yard pass. So physically, again, we're 2 weeks into this, maybe a little bit more with the days off, but physically, Purdy is looking like himself, which is what the 49ers want to see. And maybe he's looking like himself from camp last year with a high interception rate as well. But they generally, the important thing is the 49ers, especially the first-team offense, which is starting to get a lot more of the work. To give you the numbers, first-team offense, Purdy was 13 of 22. Trey Lance and Sam Darnold were the 2 quarterbacks, the second-team quarterbacks. They went 4 of 6 for Lance and 5 of 9 for Darnold. So Purdy, 22 attempts, Lance, 6 attempts, Darnold, 9 attempts. Gives you an idea of this first-team offense is getting more and more of the work as we're heading toward the regular season. And when that first-team offense is out there, what the 49ers want to see is they want to see this unit start to round into regular season form, which means the move-the-ball sessions and the red zone sessions are going to have extra weight added onto them. And Purdy, during move the 49ers down the field into field goal range, picked up, I think, 3 first downs on the drive. And then in red zone work, he hit Samuel and he hit Ayuk for those touchdowns that I talked about. And he also threw that interception. But you got to give Diamador Lenore some credit because that was a big, big play against Brandon Ayuk, who I said has been a vacuum cleaner this camp. It seems that anything thrown his direction has been caught. The fact that Lenore was able to beat him in that one-on-one to force that interception that bounced to Sean Gibson, that's a big arrow up for the 49ers second cornerback, who might also see some nickel action this year, depending on if Ambry Thomas is capable of relieving him at that nickel spot. Let me look through some more notes here today from practice. Purdy good during the move of the ball in red zone. That was big. Shanahan wants him to let it rip. I already said that. I put Ayuk vacuum cleaner in here. So by memory, I've already covered all that stuff. Trey Lance missed one short one a little bit later to Isaiah Winstead today. You know, I keep track of the Trey Lance short misses because that's his biggest weakness. That's where he's got to be better, and he threw it a little bit behind Isaiah Winstead, who was only about 4 or 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. It's the gimmies that Trey Lance has to convert on to raise his floor, and we'll see him have a chance on Saturday to show that he's made some improvements against the Denver Broncos, because that was his first game action against the Raiders in a long time. So Trey's going to have another shot on Saturday. It's undetermined if Purdy and the starters are going to play yet, but I'm sure that you're going to see quite a bit of Lance and quite a bit of Darnold for the 49ers against the Broncos. Today, Kerry Hyder Jr., 49ers veteran defensive lineman, was asked which D lineman stood out to you a lot. And he said Marlon Davidson. And, you know, it's harder to gauge D tackles, right? They don't flash as much as D ends. They definitely don't flash as much as some of the players who get a little bit more space there, especially if you can't watch from the press box. We're watching from the side. We don't have that elevation, that vantage point. That scrum can be hard to decipher sometimes. But Marlon Davidson's a former second-round draft pick just a couple years ago that the 49ers have in that D-line room. And I've heard now more than one person say that he's really impressed them. So Kerry Hyder, savvy vet who's played under Chris Kasarik on multiple teams, the Lions and the Niners, and multiple stints, he named Marlon Davidson. 49ers, remember last year, they only had 3 sacks from their defensive tackles combined all season long. I know they have Javon Hargrave this year, but I think there's still room for a contributor in that D tackle room. And if Marlon Davidson, who's got some pedigree, right, with that draft, if he's able to continue impressing, he might make this 53-man roster, and he'll have a chance to contribute this year. The 49ers linebackers continue flying around. They're flying around during the game, the young guys, right? D. Winters, Jalen Graham. Talked to Jalen Graham today. Guess how much he weighs? 225 pounds. That gives you an idea of where this linebacker room has moved. I mean, when you had Willis and Bowman, these were 240 to 250-pound players, but football has downsized to the point where Jalen Graham, just like a lot of these other 49ers linebackers, including Fred Warner, he's got a DB background, came from safety. And so these 40, you watched the tape from the Raiders game, you saw Graham, you saw Winters flying sideline to sideline. Graham at 225, I could see why he's flying sideline to sideline. And you could also see why the 49ers try to emphasize yards after the catch on offense. They try to play bully ball because they see linebackers around the league are getting smaller. And so they're trying to take advantage of that. It's a comparative advantage on both sides of the football. All right, we might have a couple more notes. I have D. Winters in here. On a funny play, on the interception to Curtis Robinson earlier in the game when Purdy threw it, earlier in practice when Purdy threw it, Kyle Juszczyk, who's the intended receiver, actually forced a fumble on the return. So Curtis Robinson fumbled and Purdy recovered. So it's kind of a wild play. Taco Charlton had a sack as well, and a nice sweep run today from Ty Davis Price. I know I've talked about him a lot, but I wanted to get Juszczyk in this as well. Nice lead block on that play from Kyle Juszczyk. All right, hope this covers practice well enough for you. Stay tuned for the next one. We'll have a big breakdown of what the 49ers are doing. I'll talk to you all very soon.